A lot of people look at Tucson and think this could be a fresh start, a new chapter, a different kind of life. And sometimes that's exactly what it becomes. I moved to Tucson in 2021, and one thing I've noticed since then is this: Tucson doesn't really change who you are. It tends to amplify who you already are. So if you're considering this move as a reset, especially later in life or as a second home decision, this is something worth thinking through before you commit. When people relocate here in retirement or buy as a second home, they're often trying to solve something. Sometimes it's burnout, sometimes it's a career ending, kids moving away, or it's just a sense that the life they built no longer fits. And it's natural to think a different environment will create a different internal experience. But Tucson isn't a high distraction city. It's quieter, it's more spread out. It gives you more space than a lot of places people come from. And space doesn't fix anything. If you're grounded, space feels peaceful. If you're unsettled, space can feel louder than expected. Sometimes retirees who move to places like the Catalina foothills picture mountain views, golf, nice weather, slower pace. And they assume that the environment will naturally create a full social life. They buy the right house, they join the club, they experience Sabino Canyon. Everything checks out on paper. But what some people don't anticipate is that proximity doesn't automatically create connection. Tucson doesn't manufacture community for you. In places like Green Valley or certain 55-plus communities, there's a more built-in structure: clubs, activities, organized groups. In the foothills or parts of central Tucson, life is more independent. And for some people, that independence feels great. For others, it feels quieter than they expected. 6 months in, the house is beautiful, but the days feel slower than they pictured. And that's where the adjustment starts. Another thing I've seen come up quite a bit is distance from family. A couple moves here thinking they'll just fly back home and see the grandkids a few times a year. And at first they do. But what they didn't account for usually isn't the cost. It's the effort. Travel gets more tiring, schedules get harder to coordinate, weather delays in some states complicate things. And while Tucson International is easy to use, it's not a major hub like Phoenix. Direct flights depend on where you're going. Over time, what felt easy starts to feel like work. That doesn't mean the move was wrong, but it does mean that the fresh start idea turns into a logistical reality that needs to be managed. I also see this with higher-end second home buyers. Someone coming from a fast market like Chicago, Seattle, or the Bay Area buys in Oro Valley or the foothills, thinking winter here will reset the pace of life. And winter in Tucson is incredible. But if your identity is built around speed, density, and constant activity, Tucson can feel slower than you expected. Restaurants close earlier, social circles can be smaller. Summer becomes the off-season. For some people, that's exactly what they wanted. For others, the second home starts to feel more like a retreat than a real chapter of life. And by year 2, it sometimes gets used less than they imagined. So a framework I often tell people to think about is what I call the subtraction test. Before using Tucson as a reset, ask yourself, if I remove my career structure, my long-standing social circle, my familiar routines, my normal level of activity, who am I without those things? Because Tucson removes stimulation. It doesn't automatically add it. The people who thrive here are usually comfortable with that. If subtraction feels like a relief, Tucson can feel great. If subtraction feels like a loss, The tension doesn't disappear just because the weather is better. And the hard part is, the financial cost of reversing a move is easy to calculate. The emotional cost of realizing you expected the move to change how your daily life actually feels day to day, that's harder to measure. When people move to fix something that wasn't working before, it usually follows them. That's when regret starts to show up. And to be clear, this doesn't mean Tucson is the wrong choice. For retirees who value independence, manageable peace, and access to outdoors, it can be a great fit. For second homebuyers who want a seasonal rhythm instead of constant stimulation, it can work extremely well. But Tucson works best when you're not asking it to change who you are. It works when you already know how you want to live. If you're thinking about Tucson as a fresh chapter, full-time or seasonal, it's usually worth thinking through this part first. Not the house, but the structure around it. Lifestyle, distance, pace, and expectations. Because once those are clear, the real estate part becomes simple. If you want to walk through that before you commit, I've outlined how to approach it below. Tucson is an honest place. It doesn't give you a new life, it shows you the one you already have. And for the right person, that's exactly what makes it work. Thanks for watching.